Hello, welcome to Education for the 21st Century. My name is Dr. Floyd Beecham, and this is our monthly vodcast and podcast where we take on various kinds of educational and community issues. We focus on challenging issues present in the United States educational system and society today. We bring attention to areas such as educational leadership, school and community, innovation in education, research to practice, social cultural dynamics in schools, and we bring together experts to discuss all kinds of different challenges. Today, we would like to welcome Jill Pereira. And Tashina, you want to give us a bio?
Thank you for coming today, Jill.
Thank you for having me.
So to provide a bit of a background, Jill Pereira from United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley has a professional background which includes working in high-needs community areas. Jill is an advocate for systematic change across our community. As the Vice President of Education and Impact, Pereira oversees the organization's $13.5 million annual investments in education, health and human services, as well as creates and executes the strategies needed to advance successful outcomes for children, families, seniors across the region. In addition to spearheading the creation of Lehigh Valley Reads, a regional campaign to ensure all Lehigh Valley students read on grade level by the end of third grade by 2025, she is a co-founder of the Pennsylvania Community Schools State Coalition. Jill continued to ensure that Pennsylvania's Every Student Succeeds Act recognized that community school model as a strategy and has presented at numerous local, state, and national conferences on the school archetype and the role that United Way can play in large-scale social change efforts. Thank you for coming today.
Great. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Welcome. Well, can you first tell us a little bit about what brought you to your current position at the United Way?
Sure. I'm not sure how far back you want me to start, but I'll say, a professional journey starts with a personal experience. And so I was raised in a single-parent family in poverty. And my father was a Vietnam veteran who struggled with alcohol addiction after that. He and my mother split. I had two brothers. The three of us are 16 months apart. And so was raised in a single-parent family with a mother who really valued education. Our home was really like a library. There were books everywhere. And we were fortunate that my grandparents owned the home that we lived in. And it was a split house, so we lived on one half of it. And I say those things because I think when we're thinking about the work we're doing now as a United Way, all of those fortunes that I had really are what we're trying to address in our community to make sure that children have stable housing because that affects how they're able to get to school and learn, to make sure that there's a literacy-rich environment, that there is a family, regardless of some of those barriers. And so I'm a first-generation college student in my family, and social justice has kind of been a thread throughout my own personal journey that lends itself into my professional place. So prior to coming to the United Way, I was working in direct practice social work, and I was working with a lot of families in communities that had a lot of barriers to success. And I went and got my bachelor's in social work, my master's in social work. And at some point in time, and I can almost remember the moment that I recognized generational poverty can be broken through the education system and through the education system's networking with other systems. And so at that time, the United Way was offering a position for an assistant director with community schools. And I didn't really know what that meant, but it sounded pretty intriguing, and it was about systems and it was about education. And so I've been at the United Way for 10 years, started in that role with community schools and have kind of evolved and grown over those 10 years to be where I am now.
And can you speak a little bit about your new initiative, Read by Grade 3?
Yes. So Lehigh Valley Reads just formally launched about 2 weeks ago. And it's part of a national campaign. The Annie A. Casey Foundation back in 2012 put out a call to action to communities to say we are falling behind as a nation, and we think we can get communities to really rally around a pivotal point of third grade reading. And so we have been planting seeds since about 2012 in the Lehigh Valley to bring together lots of different sectors in our community in some really intentional ways to address the barriers for kids to be able to read on grade level by the end of third grade. It's really that pivotal moment of learning how to read and then reading to be able to learn. So it's an effort to address and support literacy across the 17 districts in our 2-county region.
And as we know, a lot of districts have also gotten on board with that, and are actively promoting it. So that's excellent. But I think something else that you mentioned, bringing together the various kinds of agencies, because a lot of different institutions were making efforts sort of in their own lanes. But as I've worked with the United Way, I've noticed how you all have kind of coalesced and found ways to bring everybody together at the same table.
Yeah, we operate under a framework called collective impact, which really recognizes there's no single organization that can move the needle on large-scale social change. And yet all of the organizations in a community have a role to play. So some organization needs to take a leadership role in setting the table and helping the organizations understand what their piece in the puzzle is. And so we've stepped into that realm in many ways as the backbone organization of a collective impact effort. I think Lehigh Valley Reads is a really great example. We've been joined by PBS 39 in that backbone role over the last year. And so as we think about, how do you get a momentum moving in our community with this kind of work, it's having a public broadcasting organization whose primary audience are families of young children has been really incredibly helpful. But having school districts at the table and having business and health networks and other folks at the table all thinking about their role in advancing literacy has been extremely exciting, and we're starting to see some wins.
Awesome. Excellent.
So you're kind of saying this about we need to build partnership, and can you just kind of dissect a bit, how do you build partnership and collaboration within the community?
Yeah, well, it is not easy, but it is what drives me. I'm energized by the idea of finding those synergistic connection points that are possible between organizations. So Lehigh Valley Reads, like I said, just officially launched 2 weeks ago, and we started planting seeds for it back in 2012.
Goodness.
And so, looking at the research, what is the research saying about the importance of literacy? What are all of those cogs that need to kind of come together to help a community mobilize around that is what we've been understanding since 2012, and then talking with all of our partners across those sectors to advance the research and the knowledge, but also to kind of test out, is this something that you could get on board with? And so that's about relationship building. It's about finding a common agenda, right? It's about making sure that if we're agreeing to a goal, it's a goal that we all care about. And so at the heart of how we build partnerships is really what is the issue? And who cares about that issue? And then how will we agree to work together and measure progress towards a goal related to that issue? And so it's satisfying work, but it's slow moving. It's very, nuanced in a lot of ways, but we're finding some really good wins and success with that.
So what's probably, I think you kind of talked about the slow part of it, but what do you think is the greatest challenge as you're trying to build these various kinds of partnerships?
Keeping people's attention, keeping people's energy and attention at the table. We've had a steering committee, a cross-sector steering committee for 2 years, monthly meetings, just helping to build the infrastructure. And so there's lots of other shiny objects that come into a leader's viewpoint over the course of 2 years, which is why it's really important that the effort that we're undertaking is meaningful enough and deep enough and something that folks can really connect with that keeps them at the table. And then we have to, do some creative things. We have to lots of offline work to engage them in maybe something that's a little bit closer to their own mission, but still connects to the larger partnership work. It's a round the clock is work to keep a partnership moving.
Yes. And since United Way uses the community school model, could you explain to our audience a bit more about what that is?
Sure. So I'll back up just a second to say, so Lehigh Valley Reads is looking at ensuring that all Lehigh Valley students read on grade level by the end of third grade by 2025. And we have several pillars that we are addressing in order to make that reality. One of them is ensuring that we have a really robust community school network. And so we have 28 schools identified right now across the Lehigh Valley in Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, and Bangor that are implementing the community school model. And so that model is really, it can be enacted in any school. For the limited resources we have, we've looked at highest need schools. And it's really all about understanding what are the needs of kids and families in that school building, what are the needs of educators, what are the needs of other community members, and then hiring somebody whose job it is to understand all of those needs and do an asset scan of the community of what exists to address those needs, and then coordinate all of that very effectively inside of the school building. So Lehigh is a great lead partner in this effort with 2 schools on the south side where we fund a bit towards the salary of those coordinators, but Lehigh also funds and employs the community school coordinator who is a Lehigh employee but lives inside of a public education building. And so having that person who can be just completely committed to intentional networking and partnership has made so much progress in the lives of so many kids.
It's amazing.
Yep. And then I do have a follow-up question here, sort of twofold. First, kind of what made the United Way interested in adopting this strategy and really going towards this particular model?
We had actually started family centers maybe 2 decades ago, which we were funding some as a resource primarily focused on social services inside of a school. So there'd be a resource coordinator that would focus on just the social services and would help families connect to get some of their needs met. And back in the 90s, we went looking for something that was a little bit more comprehensive, a little bit more integrated into the fabric of the school. And the Children's Aid Society in New York City had been already promoting the community school model. And then there's an organization out of Washington, D.C. called the Coalition for Community Schools. And so it really took on, it's kind of an evolution of the family center, if you will, that it's not just about the social services, but it's also about ensuring that our kids have exposure to professional people. You know, a lot of our folks that live in poverty might not know anybody in their professional, in their personal world that has a professional career. And so you don't know what you don't know, and you don't aspire to be anything different if you don't know that that's out there. So community schools are really about meeting the basic needs. They're about positive youth development opportunities for kids and families. They're about ensuring that parents and families are seen as partners in the educational system. We certainly strive to make sure that schools have an engaging curriculum, and wherever you can push in an expert from the community into a classroom setting, it brings the learning to life in a different way. And so those are some of the components of the community school model.
Now, the second thing I was going to interject is, under full disclosure, I think we worked together a while back. I was actually supervising the two community school coordinators in the various schools. And I will say that this is truly a collaborative, integrated model where you have a lot of entities that don't usually overlap in these kinds of ways, to actually have someone employed by Lehigh but actually spending full time in the school, actually embedded in the school. It's we're talking some real out of the box, innovative kinds of thinking. And then, but maybe you can also talk a little bit to the way that, because I know it's also connected to. I know we have a tutoring effort going. We have our Lehigh students are involved in some of the schools. Maybe you can talk a little bit as to some of that further reach.
Sure. Yeah, so what we've found is when a community school partners with a higher ed institution, and Lehigh has gone all in, so you're the lead partner and more, But even some schools that don't have the lead partner as a higher ed, but find a way to tap into higher ed, the opportunity to bring talented professors, their knowledge into a classroom is something that's currently happening. The student base, and again, Lehigh is a really great example of how you all want your students to engage in the community and to learn how to serve in a community. The community school model really is a nice alignment for Lehigh's mission around service learning. And so there are hundreds of Lehigh students that are coming into these community schools working with our kids. And kids are seeing kids that look like them, just a little bit older, right? That are inspiring them and supporting them and helping them learn and grow in new ways. And so I think what we've started to measure over the last couple of years, we being mostly Lehigh, is we've been measuring the impact on the students in the elementary and the middle school, but Lehigh has also been measuring the impact on the college student of those experiences with young people. And there are some really tremendous results in terms of students changing trajectory of their educational journey based on their experience working in a public school. And just heartfelt anecdotal stories around how it has helped them to appreciate maybe their own circumstances differently or living in a community where there's a lot of diversity.
And exposing a lot of youth to different social networks. I mean, that's so amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
So just kind of to take a step back and focus a bit on your position, you have major responsibilities. So I want to ask you, how do you set priorities when there are multiple projects competing for resources?
Yeah. So in the spread of how United Way thinks about priorities with projects, or in the scope of my own personal workload and priorities, just get a
bit of both would be great.
Yeah, so I've learned a great deal about project management over the last 3 or 4 years, and it is like drinking from a fire hydrant almost every day in the work that we're doing. And so as my role just continues to evolve, it feels like it just keeps expanding out. But there's an amazing team of folks at the United Way committed to large-scale social change in education, in food access, in healthy aging, even with our emergency services work. And so the organization itself has put a priority on, there are lots of other issues out in our community, right, other than those 4 that I just mentioned, and we know that we can't address them all and do them justice. And so even just in recognizing these are the core 3 issues, and then support for emergency services has been a focus for us, right? How to prioritize. We used to try to be all things to everybody, and you can't make true impact if you're going an inch deep and a mile wide.
Right.
So it has meant over time we've had to make some really hard decisions on how we focus our time and attention and our resources, our dollars and investments. So we have an investment plan that gets crafted every 4 years, and in 2014 we committed to an 8-year plan around 3rd grade reading, older adults remaining in their home, and food access.
Wow.
And so we're now 1 year into the second leg of that journey, and we're seeing some really great progress as we're able to go deeper with our investments. So I think that has been tremendously beneficial to our community. It has allowed our staff to get really sharp as content experts around these different bodies of work. And then internally with our team, I mean, we do have a good team. So project management tools, you'll see lots of whiteboarding in our office, and Excel spreadsheets are part of what we use. We use a couple of online tools. I mean, it's a balancing act every day. I feel like I could double over as a circus performer if I needed to. So.
Goodness.
Jill, what's probably the most crucial thing that community members should know about the United Way?
We are committed to community. We are looking for every angle we can to impact positively the issues in our community that matter to people. And so we do that through fundraising. We do that through fund investing. We do that by continuously assessing what are the needs in our community. We do a lot of research on what's working in other places and how that might be applicable to what's needed in our Lehigh Valley. We're really diligent about making sure that the dollars that we raise are being invested really wisely into programs that work. And so I think the transition that our United Way has made is that we're really driving the ship on how those resources are being best utilized. Where in the past we were definitely more of a fundraising organization, and allowed those organizations that were receiving money from us to kind of make their own decisions on how the monies got used. And we've taken the reins a bit on the planning for what research says is actually beneficial.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And if individuals want to get involved with United Way, how do they go about doing that?
So United Way writ large, they could check us out on the website, www.unitedwayglv.org. If the education piece is really a burning passion for folks out there, you could look at Lehigh Valley Reads.org. And in that effort particularly, we've just started a conversation around the need for a robust and evidence-based tutoring initiative. So one of my first calls is going to be to Lehigh and to the community service office, where I know there's a really robust training process already in place for the hundreds of students that you all have as tutors and volunteers, and how might we be able to expand that across the region.
Do you have any final thoughts or any other final messages that you want to communicate?
Do I, Laura? No. I think the only overall message is that there is a role to play for everybody, right? So we might be leading the charge on bringing people to the table. It's a really big table. It is open for people to step up and be at the table. There's a role for anybody and everybody in our community who wants to impact, who wants to help create change. And so if you're out there and you're interested, look us up and get involved.
All right. Excellent. I want to thank you once again for just your time and your support over the years. It's been we've been doing this for a while now.
We've been doing it for a while, yes.
And we're just very happy to be on the journey with you. Tashina, any other final thoughts?
Thank you for coming here and sharing your knowledge and information. Before I came to Lehigh, I knew nothing about community schools or Lehigh's involvement with the community, and so it's been a really amazing growing experience, very fruitful. So thank you for being here today and sharing.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
We also have a visitor off camera. You can't see this person, but we want to thank her also for coming with
Thanks,
Jill
Laura.
today. Thanks, Laura. And thank you for joining us out there, wherever you may be. And be sure to stick with us and join us next time. And as usual, I won't tell you who the guest is. It's always a surprise. But stick with us here on Education for the 21st Century. We'll see you next time.